District, otherwise known as SERPED. And we're hosting this virtual workshop with the town of Carver tonight to talk about complete streets. And I'll get into a little bit more about what Complete Streets is and more about the program in a couple minutes. Just wanted to take a minute to introduce the team here at SERPED, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jim for a minute. But on the line from SERPED, we have Sarah Brown, Gregory Gerton, and Sean Hilton. And along with me, we're here to talk to you about Complete Streets tonight. Some quick housekeeping items. The meeting is being recorded, and we will post this on the project website. We ask that people remain muted as much as possible. You can raise your hand and we'll answer a question at any time, but it's usually better with background noise if everybody's muted. And we also will have a number of poll questions that'll pop up on the screen. And you just click the answer that you want and hit send, and you can get kind of an idea of what's going on. These questions are really designed to help us figure out how we should be prioritizing things and also who we've got with us tonight. We'll also have an interactive mapping exercise that we can provide input, and we'll do an open floor for questions at the end. Okay, Jim, want to talk about this?
Sure. Jim Walsh, Director of Planning for Town of Carver. And I just want to thank everyone, SERPED, for helping the town out with the Complete Streets project, as well as thanking all the folks who are online with us tonight to help with the existing
Jim,
conditions.
could you turn up your mic or your volume a little bit? Sorry.
So I just want to, my volume is as high as it can get. So can you hear me now okay? All right. I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. This is a very important process because it will help the town, one, prioritize projects that townspeople identify as important projects, transportation projects for the town. And the program does provide kind of a funding source to help implement those, which can also be combined with other transportation funding sources. So again, thank you all for coming out tonight, and I'll hand it back to Sarah. I'm sorry, Jackie. I'm looking at Sarah.
You'll hear from Sarah in a little bit. She's going to do a demonstration for us, but thank you, Jim. And I just want to say we've had really great input from a number of entities in the town. We've talked to the superintendent, we've talked to the Council on Aging. Jim's been great with providing feedback. We've heard from police, but tonight's really about getting your feedback as a member of the community. So we're gonna put a poll question up on the screen to see, kind of get an idea of who's in attendance tonight. And so questions should be popping up on your screen any minute. What best describes you? Are you a resident of Carver? Are you a town government representative? Are you a student? There is always a good answer to.
Can we check more than one?
Just one, I'm sorry.
Just one. Okay. Thank
you. Okay, looks like we're getting some voting. Okay, so we have a 60-40 split with a little bit higher representative from the government side of things, but also a good 40% Carver resident. I think you should see the results right now. And just a reminder, these polls are anonymous, so I'm not going to know who's answering which question which way. But so just a couple of meeting protocols, very similar to the housekeeping I went over earlier. Just if you want to talk, please use the raise hand feature. There's closed captioning available in the top left of your screen. It's called Otter. I don't think we have anybody on the phone tonight. And there's a chat feature, so if you don't want to talk out loud, please feel free to use the chat. We have staff watching that very closely. Okay, so our agenda for this evening, we're going to talk about what is the Complete Streets program. And we're going to talk about what SERPED is doing to help Carver with that process. the current status of the program, and then kind of next steps. And again, Sarah's going to be doing a demonstration, and we're going to do an interactive workshop exercise. So what is a complete street? Complete street is a facility that safely and comfortably accommodates all users, regardless of age and ability or mode of transportation. See the official definition. In short, it's making the roadway for everyone. Cars, bikes, people walking, buses, trucks, emergency vehicle responses. We want to make sure that the road is to get people places where they need to go, regardless of what mode they use. So to do this, Massachusetts has developed a Complete Streets funding program, and that's what we're talking about tonight, how to apply for funding for that. So there's 3 tiers of that program. Tier 1 is adopting a Complete Streets policy. Carver's already done that, and I think there's some familiar faces from that process on here. Tier 2 is where we're at right now. So that's when we look at everything in town and we help make a prioritization plan. And that's really what we're looking for input on tonight. What areas are important to you? Where do you want to see improvements to roadways, especially with bicycle and pedestrian, but also all types of users? So the town received assistance from MassDOT to do this, and Serped is helping with that. And then tier 3 is when you apply for construction funding for the projects that were identified as a prioritization plan. So what type of projects can you apply for this program? There's actually up to 60 eligible project types in this. So it's a very wide range of things. Curb ramps, things that make your crosswalks more visible, new crosswalks, crosswalk signs, bike lanes, bike racks, separate use paths. Those are like separated bike and pedestrian facilities that can be either on the side of the road or off-road completely. There's many, many options. You can repair an existing sidewalk. You can build a new sidewalk. There's lots of things that you can do with this funding. And I just want to say this, this presentation in this format will be available on our website after this meeting. So you can look at all these different types in more detail if you're looking for. Oh, another fun thing they can also do with this funding is if you have a road where you have a lot of speeding, you can do radar feedback signs that would be installed permanently. I think most police stations have them now where they can kind of move them around. These would be more permanently installed on the side. So what is the process that Serped is taking with Carver to make this prioritization plan? We reviewed existing plans in town. So we looked at master plans, open space plans, plans like that to kind of get an idea of what Carver residents have prioritized before with similar types of things. We've done field work where we went out and measured the existing roadways. We looked at the presence of sidewalks, intersections, and we'll get into a little bit more detail of what we looked in a minute and the process for how we did that. But we've done that. We've collected all that data, and now we're on the project selection process. So the input you will be giving tonight will be helping us pick projects and really prioritize what's important to Carver. And then we take that and we make a report, which is more like a detailed spreadsheet of exactly where the project is, what the project will be doing, and the estimated cost. And then that goes to MassDOT for consideration. When they approve that, then the town can apply for funding. Here's a quick look at our timeline. We started in November. We had a team meeting in January with the superintendent and police and council on aging and Jim. We collected all the existing condition data, and we're right here right now. So this is public meeting number 1. We're going to take all the feedback from tonight's meeting, make that prioritization plan, and then we're going to bring the recommendations back to the town to make sure that we got it correct and that we're prioritizing the correct things. And then the final report is due in June. We're hoping to get that done May 31st at the latest, so we can have some time to get input into the system. That's our timeline. So here's a little bit of a look at what we found when we did that existing conditions analysis. So the roads in red on the screen are the ones that we looked at in We found that we looked at 74.5 miles, lots of measuring. We found that there were some sidewalks, which you can see a little bit better on this map. A lot of those sidewalks that we looked at, with the exception of 58, were not in excellent condition. We didn't do all of the subdivision sidewalks, but we did look at a large number of them. So this anything in red or orange is in not so great condition, and anything in green is in good shape. And you can also see on this map, we looked at locations of things that people might want to go to. We have Edaville, we have schools, we have open space, spaces where people generally like to walk to or walk in. So this is the bike network that is on paper mostly for Carver of, I think it was created originally by the Bike Path Advisory Committee, but it's also in the Carver Open Space Plan. So this is the kind of places that we would look to prioritize bicycle improvements. We also looked at the crashes throughout town to kind of highlight where existing safety problems are. We looked at the severity of those crashes. Were they severe crashes, or were they property damage only kind of type things? And then we looked at land use. It's not popping up on my screen right now. Here we go. So all these different colors represent all the different land use in Carver. The brown is, no surprise, is agriculture. So that's a lot of cranberry bogs mostly. That's what you're looking at there. Blue is institutional, which is places like Miles Standish. There's also housing and open space in green. The top three land uses in Carver are agricultural, residential, and institutional. Okay, so time for another poll question. So now that you've seen the land use and the different sidewalks and things already in town, where would you be able to like to be able to walk or bike to? And I think this is multiple choice. No, not this one. So it's, where would you most like to be able to? What's the most important place that you'd like to be able to walk or bike to? Is it schools, employment services, restaurants, shopping, open space or nature? Great, so I'm seeing everyone has voted. So large majority, 80% want to see open space and nature, but 20% also are interested in getting to restaurants or shopping. And that's actually similar to answers that we've seen in other towns. A lot of people want to be able to walk in natural spaces. We'll do another quick poll. Sorry. So what types of improvements do you want to see in general? Do you want, and this is a multiple choice question, so you can pick more than one. Now that you've seen what the Complete Streets program can fund, what would you be interested in funding with it? What are some infrastructure types that you'd like to see? Bike paths, bike lanes, repair the existing sidewalk that you have, new sidewalks that connect to things, crosswalks and curb ramps. And I'll give a minute on this one because sometimes the multiple choice takes a while. It's also nice to have bike racks. If you're planning to bike around town and go certain places, it's nice to be able to lock them up. Give a minute for everybody to put their choices in. Great. So a lot of people want to see new sidewalks. So new connections to places where sidewalks aren't already exist, or maybe closing gaps. Bike lanes and bike paths are also popular. Safer intersections, bike racks, my favorite, and crosswalk and curb ramps. It's nice to be able to walk down the road on the sidewalk, but it's also nice to get across.
May I ask a question, Jackie?
Sure, if you have a question, please go ahead.
If you go back to the screen before,
Sure.
You're calling the blue land pieces of land institutional.
Yeah, it's a general category we use
Those are
land use code.
okay. And then you said the green is open space.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, all the blue is open space also.
Okay.
Just for informational sake, except for the airport. I mean, the airport is not.
Yeah. So I think the codes, to the best of my understanding, are based on how the land is owned, basically.
Ownership. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got it.
That's why they're categorized differently. But yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I should have explained that a little bit better. Okay. And those existing conditions, this is kind of a look at how we get that data. We look for the presence of infrastructure like crosswalks and sidewalks, or the lack of those things. We take many measurements. We look at the materials. So what kind of pavement, what kind of sidewalk, is it concrete or is it asphalt? We also look at the condition. Is it good? Is it poor? And we also look to see if it meets basic ADA standards. So is it generally wide enough and things like that. And then we take all those findings and we categorize them based on how the MassDOT program categorizes them. And we like to get a good mix of all these different categories so that we're kind of filling all the requirements of the program, and also to make the town have a well-rounded program. So we look for network gaps, places that have sidewalk over here and sidewalk over there, but they don't meet priority locations. That's what we're determining tonight, and also through talking with the town, what's important to the people who live there. It also includes connections to things like schools and parks. We look at what's in bad shape or infrastructure. That can include sidewalks, but also can include pavement of the roadway too. No facility. So there are roads that have no sidewalks or crosswalks or anything like that, but really need them. And ADA compliance. Does it accommodate everyone who needs to use it, or does it exclude people? And here are some examples of what those potential projects could look like. These are not set in stone projects for the town, but they were things that were brought up to us that might be good projects. And it's kind of just an example of what the program can do. So we heard that the new elementary school has sidewalks and crosswalks, but maybe those crosswalks aren't as visible as they could be. So in a situation like that, we'd put in what we call rectangular rapid flashing beacons, but they're highly visible crosswalk signs that have flashing lights that are really visible to cars to let people know that pedestrians are using it. And those can either be pedestrian actuated by somebody pushing a button, or they could be motion activated. But we found, and studies have found, that they are very helpful in improving pedestrian safety. And if we're talking about those categories, this would be PL, which is a priority location. We also heard Purchase Street is a relatively new signal, but there's only crosswalk on one side, right here, and sidewalk on one corner. So for this one, we would recommend something like having pedestrian sidewalks and crosswalks and curb ramps and all that stuff on all corners. There's also some ball fields down the street that would be nice to connect to. So you'd also want to put sidewalk down there. or maybe even a separate use path that allows for bicycles too. And then we also went out and looked at this intersection in front of the Council on Aging. It's a very wide open intersection. It doesn't really allow for pedestrians to cross the road safely. Also, wider roads generally have higher speeds of travel. So in a situation like this, we would recommend narrowing all of the approaches to the intersection, moving the crosswalk to where it can be behind a stop sign, so it's safer for the people crossing and they're more visible. We'd also want to see improved sidewalk conditions and curb ramps so people can access it. And this one hits a lot of categories: network gap, priority location, no facilities on some of the approaches, and also the infrastructure that out there is not ADA compliant. Okay, there's also an existing bicycle route there, so we'd want to make sure that either the sharrows that currently exist there are replaced, or we'd want to see if there was a possibility to upgrade to a slightly more protected facility. Okay, and what are the next steps? So Sarah's going to do a demonstration of our interactive mapping tool. That's going to show you how you can provide input. This is something that you can either do offline without us, or after Sarah provides a demo, we can open up the floor and you can tell us where in town you'd like to see improvements and we'll put it on the map for you. So I don't know if you want to show that now, Sarah?
Yes. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see it? Okay, so I'm going to also put the link in the chat for everybody. But this is a tool that we've been using for people to put points on a map and be able to write a comment about them. So we used this tool when we had our kickoff meeting with the town earlier this year. And these are the points that we started to come up with. So some of these points are like add sidewalks on Purchase Street, add a bike lane. So the way to use this tool is you'll come up here and it says click point. If you want to add a pedestrian, like a topic for pedestrian, bicycle, car, transit, or an intersection, you'll just click whichever one you would like. So say you want to add a sidewalk. And I'll just put it here as an example of what we just had. So then you'll have your cursor will turn to like a crosshair and you can click on your location. And then you can add your comment. You just type in however much you want. This does not record your name or anything, so it's anonymous. And then once you're done your comment, so add a sidewalk. You just hit submit. And then it's there. And then say you put a point on accident, and so you just accidentally dropped one, that's fine. Just click cancel and the point will be taken away. You can also comment on points that are already existing on the map. So say you thought that this point, this is a good location for bikes to go past. And instead of like putting a new point there, you can click on here and you can say, I agree. Or say you decided like, oh, that's not really a good location. Then you can say, I disagree. But you could also leave a comment. So you could do like, I agree, and then you could type your comment, or you can just simply hit the agree, I agree, and then click add. So I'm just going to click add to show you. So once you click add, it goes to the bottom. So if multiple people add here, there'll be like a bunch of different comments at the bottom. So that's pretty much it for this tool. And I'm going to put it in the chat. So please feel free to send this to as many people as you like. It's totally anonymous.
Is there any locations that anybody wants to talk to that's on the call with us tonight? Happy to take anything down and put it on the map. Sarah?
Thank you. I don't think it showed up. I earlier today tried to put a suggested a bike lane going from Route 58 down West Street, down Home Street to Cross Street to Pope's Point Road, and then all the way down Meadow Street. Both Meadow Street's kind of a big circle. So going all the way down Meadow Street to and out to 58 again. And the reason for that is that's West Carver, and it's very very scenic. And it doesn't get a lot of traffic, but when it does get traffic, they're going fast. So I did add, that's mine on West Street there. And I don't know why it didn't show up on Holmes and Cross and Pope's Point and Meadow, but just to let you know, I could try it again.
Okay.
And then I had one a little bit farther south, having Rochester Road and Indian Street. If you zero in, oh, okay, good, it took, yay. Because they meet there at, I think that's Huckleberry Corner. And both of those streets are also very scenic. And, but again, it's tough because there's not enough place for a bicycle really at this point.
So do you want to see something like a Sharrow there? I know there's a couple of places in town that already have them, but
Well, that's what I was thinking, some sort of bike lane, both there and that whole area in West Carver. Yeah.
I've biked out there before. I agree. It's very scenic out there. Can be tight though.
Yeah, and they're beautiful streets, so it's really nice to ride there.
Another consideration too is it could be a combination of sharrows and signage to let people know. And then one of the things I thought about during certain seasons, there's a lot more truck traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some signage that would indicate the seasons where you have the higher truck traffic on the roads. Make the cyclists aware so that they can just be aware that when they're out there that, you know, especially say the less experienced cyclists, that they're aware that there's going to be trucks on the road.
Right. Well, that's definitely needed on 58. There is a pretty nice area on the side of 58 that you can ride, but it's hard when they go past you at 60 miles an hour.
Yikes.
Agreed.
It's pretty fast.
Even hard for people in cars.
And yeah, maybe hard for people in cars too, having to pull out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, it's me, Sean. I'm not Jen, even though it says Jen in the corner. So to what Sarah was talking about, Jackie, you had showed a few previous slides with the bike path advisory committee had basically created a route that is exactly part of what Sarah was just describing.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you can pull that back up or not, but that's okay. Part of that, along with what Jim was saying and Sarah with 58, where certain roads had more right of way or easements or whatever on the sides of the road that allowed for a bike lane or not. So like that dark purple maybe was part of that bike path, and that mostly was, I think, intended to be sharrowed because there wasn't enough room for a dedicated bike lane.
Right.
And then where 58, I think for everybody would agree what you just talked about, maybe there is room. Do you have the map that shows the roads and the breakdown as to which roads had more easement than others? That might be beneficial too, to add into all of this. And then one last thing, if I may just keep piling it on here. There was a lot of signage that was kind of pre-planned with that bike path advisory committee. Most of it was more so routing signs for those physically riding the bikes. Maybe not as much for like the trucks, although I think that's a great idea as well. So yeah, does Serped have a copy of all that information?
Yeah, we do have Well, I'm not sure if we have the signage plan, but we do have some files from the original effort that we used to make that map. I have a map that shows where sharrows would be and where bike lanes would be. I don't think I have one that has signage per se.
Yeah, and I'm afraid in my comments I called it a lane or a path. I meant to say lane, but a sharrow might be more appropriate, as Sean said, depending on the road.
Yeah, and as Sean said, we also will be looking at the amount of right of way that the town has, or the amount of space that can be used. We also look at that scenario too, if there's utility poles that would need to be moved, which is very expensive, things like that too, to check the general feasibility of doing either a side path or if sharrows would be more appropriate.
I'm sorry, what did you say? What's expensive?
Moving utility poles.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of the deal breaker, whether you do a path on one side or you use the sharrow options. Is how expensive putting that pathway is on the side is going to be, in one of those
Yeah,
factors. is
we
utility
don't need to move poles.
poles.
It's raining pretty loudly here, so if you guys could speak up, that would be great.
I'm sorry about that. I'll make an effort to speak louder.
One of my thoughts were on certain roadways such as Center Street, and then Wenham Road into that kind of the old Route 44 where it's Wenham, and then it connects partly into Center Street, and then further down it's becomes Plymouth Street.
Yeah.
I know it's a narrow right of way, but my thought was, you know, that's sort of the corridor that I use coming in and out of town every day. And various different times you have, you know, people are cyclists, people are joggers, you know, people walking. You know, I think, you know, I know the right of way is very narrow, but it'd be nice if there was like a shared use path that could accommodate different types of users on there.
Yeah.
You know, just, you know, it's for the safety of everyone involved. It's, you know, for the safety of the cyclist, the safety of the jogger, the walker, and then also the driver of the car, so that, you know, you stressing out trying to get around someone, and then you get the traffic coming at you.
Yeah. Generally speaking, in terms of safety, the more separated you can get a facility, the better it is.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we refer to bicycles and pedestrians as vulnerable users because they are most vulnerable to that. But it also can affect motor vehicle traffic too, especially if someone is swerving into the other lane to get around someone. So the increased safety is more separated. Saber?
Yeah, I just went onto the tool and I added a comment at the Lakeview Street and Tremont intersection.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is tough. And my comment basically is that part of what you had said was narrowing the road there because it is so wide. But on the right in front of the COA is handicap parking for the COA members.
When I went out there, there was some in the parking lot, and then I believe there was some along the building. I think you can see it in the picture in the presentation. Let me try to pull that up. But is there actual parking on the road there too? Because that's very good to know.
That's where the handicap parking is, because people can't make it up to the front door. There's no entrance down at the parking lot level. Right. So that whole from almost the ramp on the right hand side to the full left hand side of the picture is handicap parking on the street.
Yeah, we'd very much like to preserve that. If you're narrowing the approach, maybe making those parking spots more formal and a little bit more protected might be a way to narrow the road and also provide that parking.
Right. And the other thing that I mentioned in the comment is that on the left-hand side, right by the Dave's liquor store, which is also the South Carver post office, people park there in the street so they can just run in quickly and get their mail instead of having to cross traffic going in and out of the parking lot next to Dave's.
Yeah, so
And that's
again,
that's kind of like momentary parking. It's not even a minute.
yeah, so again, maybe formalizing that, making it more of a defined spot could have a dual benefit of narrowing that approach and also providing a safe parking spot for people too. That's very good to know, and something only a local person would know. So it's very good for us to hear input like that.
I'm there every day.
Thank you.
You know, that reminds me, if you go north up to Plymouth Street, the intersection of Plymouth Street and Green Street.
Yes.
North Carver Green, right. See this little green spot there? Yeah, your marker's on it. If you zero in on that, right across from that green is the North Carver Post Office. Savory just made me think of it. They have very little space there to park. It's right before that turn. Yeah, I think it's the building next to that.
Yeah, it's the one in the middle of those three.
Yeah, that one.
That one.
That's the North Carver Post Office, and it's not quite as bad a situation as it is down in South Carver, but
that's quite a curve over there too.
Yeah, and sometimes people don't necessarily park it off the street; they are kind of just off the street instead of in there.
There is a flashing light at that corner and a stop sign.
That's
so that somewhat helps.
Yeah.
A flashing light at Lakeview and Tremont might help slow people down a little bit.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Are there do you see any pedestrian issues in that area, or are there sidewalks?
Well, you know, there should be, because that's the North Carver Green, and unfortunately, it's not particularly walkable around there.
So you think that would be a good place to maybe add some sidewalks or some?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I travel that section of road quite frequently, and I encounter people walking their dogs up and down the street, but there's no pedestrian facility for them.
Yeah, it's hard to get across the street, right?
I know it's pretty narrow and windy over there, but that's somewhere we can definitely look at.
Okay.
Anywhere else in town that anybody wants to talk about? We have a lot of comments around about the schools. We've seen a lot of comments about some of the intersections from the feedback that we've got so far. What about any of the open space? Anybody see any issues with getting there, or maybe would it be good to connect to trails that are already there? Miles Standish doesn't really have a lot of sidewalks connecting into it, but there's also a number of parks in town.
There are, but they're scattered around town. The one area, if you can zero in on, I wish you could see my pointer. Atwood Reservoir. It's right there, South Central. If you could zero in on that. So right up at the top right-hand corner, you see where it says Savory Avenue. Historical site.
Yeah.
That green space.
Yeah, so that's about 50 some acres. And then Mass Fish and Game just bought this whole Atwood Reservoir area. It's about 520 acres. And then the town, hopefully at town meeting, is going to be selling another 33-acre parcel to the left of the reservoir, which abuts Meadow Street. So if that happens, you're going to have about 600 acres between Meadow Street and Route 58 at Savory Avenue. And I don't know the question you're asking, but it would be nice somehow for that to be evident to people. And there are some paths on Savory Avenue. We're working on that. I don't know what kinds of paths Fish and Game has, but I know they like for people to access their land. So But again, I don't know of the parking situations there either.
So would you say that providing pedestrian access to those existing paths would be a good thing? Maybe more sidewalks on that section of 58. I think
Well,
King Richard's Fair is also in that area. I don't know if that's something that people would really flock to.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, because really, once you get to Savory Avenue, you don't really want a sidewalk inside the conservation land, you know?
Yeah, and Savory Avenue in and of itself is historic
Mhm.
as the first divided highway in America. So
Yep.
you probably don't want to do sidewalks and curbs and things like that. You want to probably leave it as close as it can be to what it was originally.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
So
I
I
just
just
was
think
thinking
like
of,
signage and maybe directing people to park on Meadow Street where there may be a little bit more room.
that's what I was thinking, some kind of signage and just helping them see where they can park and enter it through via Meadow Street, maybe. Yeah, because we do have some signage at Savory Avenue.
Okay, that's very good to know. Wayfinding signage or signage that helps direct people certain places is an applicable Complete Streets project. Generally, it's to kind of get people to follow your bike network, but it can also have other uses.
Right, and if you zoom in a little bit more on the north end of Savory Avenue.
Yeah.
That point of the,
Mhm.
we own, Conservation Commission owns property there. And right where your cursor is now, we've got a fairly sizable amount of property that is behind someone's current residence that could provide some sort of off-street parking.
Mhm.
And then it's part of the entire Savory Avenue and wildlife management areas. So it wouldn't be hard to connect a short path between that parking area and the existing trails that are through the woods.
Right.
So you're talking about a pathway.
So Jackie,
Yeah, kind of a natural parking area for that recreation area.
yeah, no asphalt.
Right, and then just a trail that goes from that parking lot to the existing trails that are there now.
And that's a very good point Savory made, because we own about 33 more acres than is showing up here. But it's currently in the care and custody of the select board. That's something we're trying to straighten out this town meeting as well. It's supposed to be part of the conservation land. But Savory's right, there's a big chunk there that's not showing up, and
Yeah. Sometimes that process takes a long time.
yeah.
Great. Anywhere else in town that anybody wants to talk about? Or also any general Complete Streets questions?
Jackie, if I may.
I have one more thing. Sorry. I
Well,
just thought of this. Who's up?
Sean and then Jed.
Okay. So how about interfacing with like two things? One, with MassDOT, I think, and I could be wrong, part of that Route 58 is run by MassDOT. Is that still true, or
I believe it's a numbered route, but it's under the town's jurisdiction.
the whole thing now? The whole route is under the town's jurisdiction now? Is that?
I thought
Yeah.
Route 58 belonged to was a state road.
So that's the kind of the confusing thing with numbered routes. Some numbered routes are MassDOT's and some are the towns, and Route 58 is Carver's. So
Why did they upgrade Route 58 then?
So the town applied for a transportation improvement project through
Oh.
MassDOT. So they
Yeah.
basically received a federal grant for that.
Okay.
And then along the same lines, how about down where Miles Standish is and interfacing with DCR? Are there any hiccups there?
So we can't do anything on DCR property, but we could do something to connect to the entrance.
Right. Okay.
Jed, did you have, or Sean, were you all set?
I have the peanut gallery in the back is telling me one more thing. And it's a popular item, I believe that, and that's why I asked about MassDOT, because I thought that North Carver section in the area of Shaw's and Plymouth Street was by the
So-
state, but if the town owns it, but I know that intersection and that stretch from Shaw's down to the light is like a major, like, sore point for a lot of people in town, because man, and we live in South Carver, so we're not there a lot, but every time we go there, and I'm sure everyone else can attest, it's fun, so I think that one I'll probably putting a little ticket on that one later on tonight after
Yeah.
the girls go to bed, but that one would be probably a good place to start.
That is a tricky area, and you're right. The area under 44, so including the ramps, that is MassDOT's jurisdiction. Generally, in that ramp type scenario, they will have jurisdiction just for the ramps and the roadway in between the ramps. But it's a very short section of 58 that's actually MassDOT.
Right. That was why there's some confusion.
I think Sean is probably talking about from Shaw's down to the intersection with Plymouth Street, where you have McDonald's and you have the Cornerstones and the gas station.
Yeah, and then that's a good example of a gap. I think there's a little bit of sidewalk near Shaw's, and then there's sidewalk further down 58, and then there's nothing in between. So,
Right.
Yeah, that would be nice.
yeah, it's a very good example of a gap. Jed, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, obviously disclose the fact that I am a Carver resident and I also work for Serpent. So full disclosure here, but I'm curious if anyone has brought up the idea of creating sort of a loop from South Meadow, extending the sidewalk up Pond Street and west along Center Street, and basically creating a nice loop, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
Bike or sidewalk loop or both?
that's a good idea.
Both would be great.
We had not heard that one yet, so that's great. Thank you, Jed.
That would be great for a bike path too, actually. So you'll have to zero in to find Pond Street.
It's up and to the right a little.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's right there.
And that's it.
That's nice because it would connect the high school, middle school as well.
What are the streets again?
Pond and Center.
Pond Street and Center Street.
And South Meadow.
Well, South Meadow already has the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Actually, you have from Center Street down 58 to South Meadow and then over to Pond.
So I know a lot of kids from the high school use Pond Street and Center Street when they're walking home.
That's really good to know.
Yeah, and then if we're on the topic of fixing our roads, the lane drop by High Street, which I believe Sean just mentioned.
It's way up high. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a particularly, Sean, I think you used the word fun. I live in North Carver, so I travel that area quite a bit, and it's definitely an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah. You cannot turn left out of High Street. It's almost impossible.
There's a lot of weaving going on in there too. I think especially if people are unfamiliar which lane they're supposed to be in there.
Right.
In the lane for High Street, and then they're moving over. So.
The other point with that intersection with high and 58 is that poor sight lines looking to the left. So you're at a double disadvantage.
Yeah.
Also really good to know. Any other areas in town or general complete streets questions?
No, I think that there's already a marker there to extend the sidewalk from Purchase Street up to Plymouth Street.
And just a reminder, you can also vote to agree with it too. It adds a little bit more weight. Sarah's showing that on the screen right now. But you can also go in and check them out tomorrow, and if there's something that you agree with or can always.
Wait a minute, can you put
add
that
back.
back? I didn't get a chance to vote.
Oh, sorry. This is something that Sarah's showing that you can do on the map, but you can't
Oh, okay,
can't press on it now.
okay,
Sorry for
gotcha,
the confusion.
sorry.
But yeah. So if you see something on there that you really agree with, go on there and press that button and lets us know that it's a little bit of a higher priority. Okay.
I'm sure it's come up before, and this will be my last comment tonight. But I'm curious about folks' opinions of Forest Street and a potential sidewalk on Forest. I know it would probably be expensive due to grades and trees and et cetera, but I see a lot of kids up and down Forest Street on a regular basis.
Forest Street, yeah. Yeah, that's my street, actually. And what are you suggesting, Jed?
Sidewalk would
Yeah.
be a good start. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Forest Street is up north. So go
Yeah,
way up
it's off Purchase.
off of Purchase Street. This area here where you did not look at the sidewalks. Okay, so can you see Forest Street?
Yeah, it's to your left. Go left. There
Right
it is.
That's it.
So we did actually look at we looked at all the sidewalks in that kind of circular neighborhood with all the side roads. We did look at that. They were just in very poor condition.
Okay, but the thing about Forest Street, where I happen to live, is that it's 30 miles an hour. They race up and down there at 50, and Jed said that it's true. There are tons of kids on the street, and
So sidewalks and maybe
Yeah.
also some radar feedback signs just to give people an extra indication that they're driving too fast.
and there's a little ball field too, right at the end. If you can see it down just where Forest intersects with Purchase. There's a the Forest Street ball field.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Very good to know.
Thanks, Jed.
I've got 1,000 other ideas if you guys have an hour and a half or so.
Bring it on.
Okay.
As a resident, are you allowed to add them to the map?
I'm not really sure.
If
Yeah.
he can be impartial, then he can.
Of course, he can be impartial. Yep. That would be great. We could see them.
Okay.
You
Right.
had talked earlier about like a $400,000 like stipend, if you will, through this program. Is that like a yearly thing? Is that a maximum on a lifetime? Is that per project? I mean, there's a million things that we can add to this map, and everybody say we'd love to see, but when the funding,
it's a maximum per year
okay.
amount. So you can apply up to that amount.
What are
and
your
then
like
you'll
typical? Do you have like typical costs on? I mean, price per mile for a sidewalk, or price per mile on a bike lane, or things like that?
So that's something we definitely calculate. I very often hesitate to give a number on price per mile for things like that because it can be so dependent on a number of factors. Type of material, what's already out there. Like I said earlier, if a utility pole has to be moved. So, but our next meeting, we'll have all those cost estimates. So you can see those real time and see what each of the projects is estimated. But they're so context sensitive that I really don't like to give like a per mile amount.
And then that triggers one more question I have. That list of all the things that you would provide that money for, or what we could do, the radar signs, etc. I'm just curious, I would imagine it would include, if possible, maybe like the light up crosswalks where the lights are recessed in the ground and they flash. I imagine that would be something we'd consider. Not just the sign flashing, but also in the roadway.
Theoretically, yes. However, they don't tend to work well in northern states where you get snow because you get one good plow hit and they're not functional anymore.
And then how about street lighting if the town wanted to add a street light above a crosswalk or an intersection?
Yeah, I wish I could remember all the eligible programs off the top of my head, but let me just look really quick on that list. I believe.
It's definitely eligible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jed.
Yep.
So it is on there. I just caution that lighting is very expensive because you also have to get electricity to it. But yeah, if you know of a particularly dark spot in town, that's also something that we want to know about. So if you had a specific place in mind, please let us know. Definitely a big safety improvement.
Yeah, in this specific case, I mean, frankly, I like streetlights, but I'd prefer the town be dark. But you talked earlier, the elementary school was a big project, and those crosswalks there, very dark. There's been a lot of events when kids were going to school, and there's no lighting in the street. So although a crosswalk or a sign may be illuminated, you can't see the people in the roadway. So some serious lighting improvements would be, I think, extremely beneficial for that one or two crosswalks that are right there at the elementary school.
That's very good to note. That's also somewhere, if there's a lot of pedestrian activity, we tend to look at like pedestrian level lighting. So it would be closer to the actual height of the pedestrian instead of those big overhead lights. I believe there's another section of closer to the town hall that has that lower style lighting as well.
Yeah.
That's excellent, Sean. Thank you.
But if you could you make sure they're not as bright as those lights outside of town? Those are really.
I don't know if I have any control over that. That you might have to talk to the DPW about.
Put dimmers on them.
Yeah.
Okay, last call for locations, comments, questions. Anybody?
Ellen Sedillo.
Oh, hi, Ellen.
Hi. So with a $400,000 budget, who determines what areas need this the most? Because it seems like there's a lot of areas that do need some improvements.
So that's why we put together a prioritization plan. So it's a big list of all the projects that have come up through this process, everything that we've kind of discovered in fieldwork. And then we take that list and we apply criteria to it and rank that. So does it fit certain criteria? It gets points. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't rank as well as other ones.
Well, I'm voting for the Forest Street one because that is true. I never really thought about that. But there are so many kids, and now that there's Dollar General, it seems like there's more traffic in that area and people taking a right on what street is that? On the side of the cemetery there. In front of the cemetery.
I know what you mean. I'm blacking on it too.
Yeah.
Can we zero in on that Lakenham Cemetery there that you're hovering over? A little bit more. Okay.
Is it Cole? Not Cole Street.
No, it's something. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Linton.
Linton. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, because it seems like in that area too now, people are all of a sudden making a right down that street. It never had traffic before.
Right. Yeah, it's called Linton Drive.
Linton Drive, yeah.
It doesn't show up here, but it's between Main Street and the Lakenham Cemetery.
Right.
This calls here, it says Old Main Street. That's not the name of it. Old Main Street is a different street altogether.
Right.
Sometimes Google gets it wrong.
Yeah, but no, I'm sorry. I'm just telling you, I think that's the street Ellen and I are talking about.
Okay, we can verify that too.
Thank you.
Jackie, I have a question.
Sure, Jim.
With some of these priorities, so one source of funding would be complete streets. Will we also look to other funding sources to leverage complete streets money? Is that possible?
Absolutely. So through this process in other towns, we've found projects that are kind of too big for complete streets, and towns have gone on to apply for TIP funding for it. There was a project that we identified in Middleborough that they just applied for a shared winter streets and spaces grant. Let's get that one mixed up. So once you have these projects identified, ideally you would apply for complete streets, but you'll also have a list of identified projects that you can seek other sources for as well.
Thank you.
Oh, I see a hand raised, Jed.
Sorry, I said I was done, but I'm not. Silver Street
Mhm.
connecting to Johns Pond.
Oh, yeah. So Silver Street is the other side of Purchase. It's in the middle of, no, go back up, 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 up.
Waterview Village.
I don't understand why you can't see my hand. So you see where you have Waterview Village? Just zero in a little bit.
Closer to 58.
So find Purchase Street.
There's Silva.
Okay, there's Silver Street on the right-hand side after you cross 58, and there's John's Pond. That's a good point, Jen.
Yeah, that little green area is the town beach.
Yeah.
On John's Pond.
And it's heavily used.
Are those green dashed lines, are they supposed to be hiking trails,
I think those are bog roads.
bog roads?
That's private property.
Like a good mountain bike riding system.
Yeah, except it's private property.
They'll have to charge a toll.
So that is true, and a lot of kids use John's Pond. Yeah.
They're another good area to look at, and also
Actually-
if we're looking at the Purchase Street intersection too, I want to make sure that that's
Sorry to add something to what Jed just said, but if you go down to the other side of Silver Street that connects to Center Street. Yeah, I mean, if we're dreaming here, my idea would be to have the sidewalk all the way from Center, all the way down to 58. Simply because there's a lot of families living on Center Street as well, who may be anxious about riding a bike down there or walking because it's kind of tough to get there.
I encountered a family with, I don't know, they were 3 or 4 children, and they looked like they were less than 7 years old, riding up Center Street. And then later on, I noticed that they were going to the elementary school, or some of the kids were going to school, the others were going over to Dunkin' Donuts to get their little treat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I was suggesting if it's possible, try to get like a shared use path so you could walk, jog, ride your bike.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're an elderly person that's a scooter or wheelchair bound, you could use that.
Yeah, for sure.
We always want to put these things where people are going to use them. So it's good to know where people are already using them as well, or using the road. Anybody else? Okay, last call. Okay, I'm gonna do one more poll. So we've gotten kind of these specific locations for people, but we also kind of want to know generally where should we focus more on, main roads, neighborhoods, or connections to specific places. I kind of have an idea of where this is going to go based on the comments, but one last poll question.
Can't we do both?
Sorry,
Well, three.
just one. Okay, just another second. Okay. Okay, so, so a lot of 67% said connections to and from specific places. I'm not surprised by that at all based on the conversation, and also 33% on main roads. Thank you very much. That will help us. It's a lot of potential projects, and anything we can do to help prioritize it based on what the town wants, that's good for us. Okay, so just want to thank everyone again for joining us tonight. If there's any way you can spread the word about what we're doing and let people know about our website, we'd greatly appreciate it. The more comments, the better. Here's some additional ways to contact us. And again, this will be on our project website tomorrow. It's on the Serped website, Carver Complete Streets. Please feel free to reach out directly to me or to Sarah. We're here to answer any questions that you might have. You see Jed floating around town. You can ask him any question you want to. We also, on our website, we have a phone number you can call, email addresses. We'll also be dropping off some paper maps at town hall. So if anybody wants to come in and scribble on those and let us know the same stuff that we learned on the interactive map, some people like that better. We'll be doing that as well. So please contact us with any questions. And thanks again for coming.
Jackie, can you just speak a little bit about the office hours next week?
Oh, sure. We'll also be having office hours next week, which is basically open drop-in times that people can come and talk to us about what's going on in the project, if there's any more specific questions. And the timing and links for those are also available on the project website. And we'll be putting it out on Facebook and a number of other ways. And then they just you just click the link and it brings you right to Zoom during the hours, and you're good to go. And once again, thanks to Jim for helping coordinate all this. We'll be able to get this going without him.
And thanks to the Serpent team, and thanks for everyone for participating tonight. Even Jed.
Actually, Jed. Thank you all.
All right. Night.
Night.
Good night.